The campus church at Pensacola Christian College invites you to rejoice in the Lord.
Welcome to the Rejoice in the Lord telecast. It's a great joy and a privilege to be able to share this very special time with you. We'd like to update you on situations that relate to our ministry. Perhaps many of you have not been aware of the fact that Mrs. McBride has been battling with a very serious illness for some time. This last year, as a result of that, Pastor McBride felt it necessary for him to resign his position as pastor of Campus Church and also as speaker on Rejoice Telecast. Pastor McBride has been a blessing and encouragement to so many of us on so many different occasions. We do have a word from him that we would like to share with you at this time.
Rejoice in the Lord is a wonderful ministry that I never could have imagined that God would give me the opportunity to be a part of. Over these past several years, serving as pastor of Campus Church and the Rejoice Telecast have truly been a blessing in my life. For a couple of years, my wife has had some health issues and she needs more care and assistance at this time. I have come to the conclusion that she needs me to be with her full time, and I want to be there for her. Therefore, today will be my last time to be with you on Rejoice in the Lord. I am retiring from ministry in order to care for my wife. This is not what we anticipated or planned when we began our ministry on Rejoice, but it is our next challenge together, and we trust God for our future.
I trust that you will continue to uphold Pastor McBride and his family in prayer as they go through this very difficult time. As a result of Pastor McBride's decision, the Campus Church began the process of seeking the man that God had as our next pastor. The result of that search was calling by a vote of the congregation Dr. Jeff Redlin to be our next pastor. Dr. Redlin is a graduate of Pensacola Christian College. He also served for some 15 years as the youth pastor here at Campus Church. For the last 15 years, he has served as the senior pastor of Front Range Baptist Church in Fort Collins, Colorado. Dr. Redlin has been greatly used of God already in our midst to encourage and challenge our people from the Word of God. And we are certainly excited about what God is doing in this place. Next week, Dr. Redlin will begin his ministry as the speaker on the Rejoice in the Lord telecast. And we are certainly again excited about what the future holds. Thank you so much for joining us today as we rejoice in the Lord.
David presents us this morning with a very classic chicken or the egg scenario. Which came first? Now, of course, we're creationists, so we know it was the chicken. But a lot of folks are confused about that. So let's look at a scenario where we need to ask ourselves a question: which came first? 1 Samuel 16:1 says this: God chose David. For I have provided me a king among his sons. Speaking of Jesse's sons. God said, I have provided me a king. He chose him. Verse 12, Samuel is told straight out, arise, anoint him, for this is he. God chose him. Did God choose David? And then David became a man after God's heart? Or did God choose David because he was a man after his heart? You will notice that when he is anointed by Samuel, that's when the Spirit of God fell on him. Not before. But God chose him before. It's important to note that there are no verses that claim that God was after David's heart. Now, yes, there are general comments in the Word of God that God's after every man's heart and sent His Son to die for all men, and He wants your heart. There are no verses that specifically state God being after David's heart individually for such an important thing. Twice we're told, however, in the book of 1 Samuel that David was after God's heart. Now, God not being a respecter of persons, I believe this auditorium is full of Davids. You say, well, now, hang on. Now, wait a minute. David was special. And in many ways, that's true. And he is unique, but he's no more unique than you are. God called David to be king of Israel. Okay. Let's be honest. I think I can say with very little possibility of contradiction that God hasn't called any of you to be king of Israel. Okay, he was special. God used him to chastise and smite the Philistines. And even though I did teach junior high for a time, I don't believe God's called me to smite the Philistines. He was special in a number of ways. But in many ways, he wasn't. There are no verses that exclude any of us from that privileged group of people that are after God's heart. Israel had been on a long, slow drift away from God. Things had not been going well at all. They wanted a king. And they listed 3 reasons why. They said to Samuel, "You are old." Well, that's just hateful. That's all that is. Your sons don't walk in your ways. When you're dead, your boy's going to be in charge. We don't like the way they're doing things. And we want to be like the other nations around us, and they have a king. 1 Samuel 8 said this, "The Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them." So, they found a king. His name was Saul. He's tall, dark, handsome. He had a measure of humility, at least in the beginning. But it didn't take long for Saul to reveal his thin-skinned attitude, his hot temper, his murderous jealousy, and his disobedient spirit. In the dark days of Saul's rebellion, God did not abandon his people. He intervened for his people. Hold your place here at 1 Samuel 16. Turn back a few pages to 1 Samuel 13. And let's see what God said in 1 Samuel 13, verse 13. Samuel said to Saul, "Thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart. And the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee." Now, when did God say that? He said that before David was anointed. I've already found him, and he's going to do a better job at this than you would have done, and it'll be his kingdom. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart. So here's our question. Here's our premise this morning. Are we people after God's heart? Or do we honestly believe that that's a unique group of people that God calls, and we all can't fill the bill there, that we all have not been assigned that job to seek the heart of God? Do we seek his heart? Look at 1 Corinthians with me. Again, hold your place in 1 Samuel 16. And look at 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Because I want to show you that you are more than qualified to be in the same category with David. 1 Corinthians 1:26. "For ye see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. and base things of the world, and things which are despised hath God chosen, yea, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. Now, David was special. No, he wasn't. David sought God. Are you foolish? Are you weak? Are you base? Are you despised? Congratulations, you made the team. There was nothing about David. God didn't create a being higher than the rest of us when David was born. David sought God's heart. So can we. We are far too enamored with the external and the superficial. God says, I choose nobodies so I can turn them into somebody. I choose nothing so I get all the glory. I choose foolishness so my wisdom will be honored. I choose the weak so my strength can come through. If we would only seek his heart. He looks among those that are flesh, and we are flesh. He looks to us. None of us are angels incarnate. God looks to people like you and me, and he looks for certain traits, but they're not superhero qualities. Any of us can possess them. So what was it about David that we could measure up to? What is it in David's life that we can look at and say, you know, I can do that? That's not so special and different and unique. I could do that. What is the Word of God really saying when it says that David was a man after God's heart? Let me give you several things. One, he had a hungry heart. 2 Chronicles 16. The eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong in behalf of them whose heart is perfect toward him. Perfect there means friendly. Whose heart is friendly toward him. You know what David did? David decided, I'm hungry for fellowship with God. I want to be a friend of God. I want God to be my friend. I want God to know I'm his friend. My heart is friendly. And God, the Word of God says, his heart searches throughout this sea of faces that is humanity for someone who will say in his heart, I want to be a friend of God. We can do that. That's not something we can't do. The spiritually hungry man's life is in harmony with God's heart. What is important to God is important to him. Their two hearts share burdens. He listens to God's commands. He cooperates with God's desire to transform him into something more like Jesus Christ. He belongs to God completely. There are no locked closets in his life where God is not allowed. There are no areas where God is not welcome. He admits he's wrong. He does not hide it. He lays it before God and asks God to make him better than he was. God's use of any man will always be in response to that man's hungry heart. Complacency is the worst enemy we face today in Christianity. We're just happy with who we are and what we are, and the Word of God says we ought never be satisfied until we wake in his likeness. We're complacent. We're happy with something that's below the level where God would have us to be. We're content when we ought not be. We're fat and fed when we ought to be hungry and starving for the presence and power of God. He had a hungry heart. I know he did, because God said he was looking for that man. And he said in chapter 13, I have found that man. And he's the one who will be king. He had a humble attitude, secondly. He had a hungry heart. He had a humble attitude. In 1 Samuel 16, the Word of God says, for I have provided me a king among Jesse's sons. But God said he found him in chapter 13. He had already been to the home of Jesse. Now think about that a moment. Samuel, go to Jesse's house. and there you'll find the one to anoint. But when Samuel came to Jesse's house, he hadn't been there. God had already been there. He'd been there in chapter 13 or before and looked at David and picked him and said, this is the one that we want. Are you in any way aware of the fact that God has already been to your home too? God had seen David's humble heart. God had seen a servant's heart. God observed David, and God observes you. If God had been to Jesse's house, he's been to yours. What does he see there? Does he see a humble attitude? Does he see a servant's spirit? Does he see someone who lays himself before God and says, here I am, Lord, use me. I don't think too highly of myself. I understand I am foolish and weak and base and despised. And whatever it is you could do with me, I am here. And whatever it is you need to change in me, please change it. Is there humility in your home? Because God has seen it, whether it is or not. David's father called him the youngest. He brought all the other boys up, and Samuel says, is this it? You got any more? Any more sons here? Well, yeah, there's one. He's the youngest. The word youngest there means the least. Jesse didn't think much of him. I got one. He's really not worth that much. He's the least in my house. But I'll go get him. I love what Samuel said. We will not sit down till he comes back. Why? That would make him hurry. They don't want to stand there waiting on this. Where was David? You picture him in a field right outside the house. He may have been miles away. And we're not going to sit down until he gets back. This is the one we're looking for. God saw David. Psalm 78 says this, he chose David also his servant, or he chose David to be his servant. He chose also David his servant and took him from the sheepfolds. Where did God see David? He saw him in that house, and he saw him as the least. He saw him watching the sheep at the sheepfold. He knew him because David cared to know him. God wasn't looking for charisma. He wasn't looking for athleticism. He wasn't looking for outward attractiveness. And we lean on that, don't we? Because the first description we have of David, well, he was ruddy, fair complexion, good to look upon. That's why God used David. He was a good-looking guy. Really. When you have a servant's heart, you're humble. You do what you're told. You serve faithfully and quietly without concern over recognition. Psalm 24 says this, who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Who shall stand in his holy place? You want to paraphrase that? Who has a heart to seek after God? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul into vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. Sworn deceitfully means you say things about yourself that aren't true. You build yourself up and you puff yourself up, and none of it's true. You swear deceitfully. You try to get people to think something's true about you that is not. God is looking for a humble individual and a humble attitude, and David had it. David was such a man. So here's my question. Can you be that man? Is there anything that David was that we cannot be? Is there some reason why we cannot seek God's heart? We can be humble. Thirdly, David had honest actions. He did the right thing. He was honest about his actions. In Psalm 78, we find these words. From following the ewes great with young, he brought him to feed Jacob his people and Israel his inheritance. So he fed them according to the integrity of his heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. He fed them according to the integrity of his heart. You know what David was? He was down deep, bone honest. He had integrity. He was innocent, and he had character. He had honest actions. Listen to David's words. Let David speak for himself in the integrity of his heart and seeking God. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness. He was not self-righteous. He did not claim righteousness of his own. He said, God leads me in the paths of righteousness. He said, my heart is fixed, O God. My heart is fixed. I am honestly and with great integrity clinging on to you, and I'm not going anywhere else. It was David that said, search me, oh God. This is a man of integrity. This is a man of honesty. This is a man that stands before God, and his face is open to God. Find what you will. Look where you will. Search where you will. Is there some reason we can't be that person? You say, I want to be that man. I do. I want to be that man like David. I want to be a hungry man. I want to be a humble man. I want to be that honest man. Well, how did David get there? How did David become that man? Well, let's look at some things we can do in order to be that man. Some things that were true in his life that ought to be true in ours. Here's one. Quiet time. Quiet time. David needed to learn important life lessons privately before he could ever be trusted with responsibilities publicly. David watched sheep alone. Those quiet moments nurture our heart, and we live in a day and age where there simply are no quiet moments. And if you have quiet moments in your life, you're going to have to force them. He was alone in the rain and the cold and the wind and the burning sun. That is where he learned to be a king. Those that have noise in their life constantly lack depth. If you cannot stand to be alone with yourself, then you have some deep unresolved issues in your life. We need to learn to be alone. We need to learn quiet time in our life. Turn off that TV, turn off that phone, and spend some time with God. We live in this age where electronics come at you from every single direction, and there's rarely a time in your life when there's not noise in your life. If you are going to be a man with a hungry heart toward God, you're going to have to shut out all the things that try to feed your appetite in other directions. And say, Lord, I'm here. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm not here to talk. I'm not here to dominate this conversation. I'm just here, Father. Will you speak to me? I long to hear your voice. Get alone. Let solitude sink in until the silence is deafening, and all you can really hear is the thumping of your heart and God's voice. That's where David lived. And that's how he became the man he was. David sat alone and looked at the stars, and he wondered at the majesty and creative power of God. His thoughts took him to the throne of God every single night. It was in those hours of solitude that David said to both himself and to God, here am I, Lord, use me. Quiet time. You will never have that hungry heart. You'll never have that humble heart. You'll never have that honest heart until you're alone with God. You need that. Something else David had in his life that helped him become the man that God wanted was obscurity. You know, servant leaders spend much time unknown, unseen, and unappreciated. One of the things that I lament about the age in which we live is that young people are constantly told, step up, lead now. Don't wait. Well, the problem with that is you haven't had time to develop within you the character and strength that it will take to lead. Don't be in too big a hurry to take on massive responsibility. Be in a big hurry to let God make you someone who can take on massive responsibility. Don't be afraid of obscurity. Don't think you're nobody unless you're up front. You're nobody unless you're on YouTube. You're nobody unless people know who you are. You'll become a better person in those years when nobody knows who you are. Character is built in faithful obscurity. Those who can accept service that is unseen and receives no accolades are best qualified to handle the applause of the crowd. This is an aspect of humility and integrity. Don't fear obscurity. Embrace it as you grow in Him. David did. There's something else in David's life. Faithfulness. Faithfulness means being able to do the menial and the insignificant and the routine, the repetitious, the unexciting, and the uneventful. You just do what you're supposed to do. God trains in the constant, unchanging hours of monotony in our life. To do the little things over and over and over and over again, and to do them faithfully is what kings are made of. How exciting do you think it was to watch sheep? Sheep are just, they're one level above single-cell animals when it comes to intelligence. How much fun was that? I mean, a dog, if you had a dog out there, a dog will reflect your facial expression, your mood. Sheep don't. They're just incredibly unintelligent animals. Bah! That is animal for eat me. They're just not smart at all. Well, there he was. There he was, night after night, day after day, faithfully watching the sheep. What does Daddy tell him to do? Go take care of the sheep. What did David do? He went and took care of the sheep. And we think somehow that great things come to us with tremendous opportunity and responsibility and acknowledgement from people. And great things come to you when the little things, the uneventful things, the monotonous things, the over and over and over and over again things are done to the glory of God because you are faithful to what you've been asked to do. There was something else in David's life. Something else that really brought him to be the man that God wanted him to be. And it was reality. Reality. We live in a world where people think reality TV is real. I think as a nation, as a people, we are completely losing touch with reality. And that'll happen every time a nation turns its back on God, because if we serve God, we will have God's wisdom in our life. If we turn our back on God, He'll let us flounder in our own wisdom, and we just don't have any. The reality of your life is where you need to live. What am I trying to say? You'd be wrong to picture David sitting on a hilltop in a spiritual trance composing psalms. Most of that came much later in his life. In 1 Samuel 17, David has an encounter with Goliath. Well, that was real. David could have died that day very, very easily, except by the power of God. David demands the right to deal with that giant. He fusses at his brothers because they're not doing anything. He fusses at the army because they're not doing anything with that very accusatory comment, is there not a cause? This guy's blaspheming God. You going to let him get by with that? God was real to David. God's honor was real to David. God's name was real to David. And there's a cause here. Why are you standing here letting this big lumbering Philistine get by with this? Is there no cause here? Where did he get such faith and courage? Well, 1 Samuel 17 says this. David said to Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it. Well, I see several things there. I don't see that as a multiple episode. A lion, a bear. What are you doing? You're a teenager. You're sitting there on the hillside and you hear a sheep bellowing in fear, and you hear a growl, and you look, and there's a bear with a lamb in its mouth. Well, I know what the average teenager would have done. Well, it's just one lamb. I've got plenty more. Well, that came from, who's going to count these sheep anyway? There's one less. Not David. The reality in David's life was, this is my job, and this is what I need to do, and I'm here to protect the sheep, and that bear's trying to eat that lamb, and I'm going to take care of business. And by the way, look what the Word of God says, and delivered it. He killed that bear and that lion before they had a chance to eat the lamb. He jumped up and got right at it. The reality in his life was, this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to do this thing. And he killed them both and delivered them. David had been doing what was right in his everyday duties all of his life. And reality in his life was to simply do right, to handle situations as they come up. How many shepherds would have risked their life for one little lamb? David did. He was faithful. He had a job to do, and he did it. The lion, the bear, and Goliath were the reality David had to face. And he faced reality. If we would desire to be a man after God's own heart, we need to pull our head out of the clouds. Learn to be effective and diligent in the responsibilities and obligations that you have right now. Look life square in the face, understand what is real, and do what is right. I don't mean to be offensive to you, and I certainly do not mean to be offensive to God, but God does not fix our flat tires. God does not change your baby's diaper. There are just realities in life, and we need to face them and face them head on. And realize this is what I ought to be doing. This is what I should be doing. This is what I've been asked to do, and I'm going to handle these problems as best I can. Character comes as a habit of doing the right thing and doing the right thing and doing the right thing and doing the right thing. And David had it. David rolled up his sleeves and fought a lion and fought a bear. He didn't cry out on that hillside, Lord, kill that bear. Father, kill that lion. It was David's job to kill the bear. And he killed the bear. I know young people get tired of hearing this, and I think we discourage them. We don't mean to, but we're just trying to be honest. When we look at young people, we say things to them like, oh, you just graduated. Well, you know what? Life is hard. Life is tough, son. Smile today, because you got to face tomorrow. Going to be hard. Life is tough. Life is hard. Life is tough. Life is part of fatigue and heartache and disappointment. But we face reality every day. And by God's help, we kill the bear, and we kill the lion, and we kill Goliath. Do you want to be the man that God with great joy says, I found him. I found him. He said it in 1 Samuel 13. I found him. You, Saul, would have given you the kingdom. You disobeyed me. I have found a man. And he will have the kingdom. And there is nothing that David did, nothing that David was, that would cause us to somehow eliminate ourselves from that privileged class of people that seek God's heart. This room is full of Davids. If we would just be those people. Takes a hungry heart, takes a humble attitude, takes honest actions. And these qualities in our life will be produced by time, by being what we should be in obscurity, by doing the mundane and unglamorous things faithfully, and by facing our reality head on and doing what we need to do and what we ought to do today, tomorrow, the next day, until Jesus comes home and takes us. He was a man after God's heart. What was first? Did God change David into a man that was after his heart? Or did God find David to be a man after his heart? You ought to ask yourself that question. David was anointed after God chose him. Why did he choose him? Why would God choose you? Why would he not choose you? Do you want to be that man? You can be. You ought to want it. You ought to be hungry for it. Your heart ought to bow before God and say, please make me that man. Give me that character. Cause me to be that man. I want that in my life.
We're glad you joined us for Rejoice in the Lord, coming to you from the campus church at Pensacola Christian College. Your financial help is vital in keeping the Rejoice telecast on the air. With your tax-deductible gift, this viewer-supported ministry can continue to reach the world with the good news. Please let us know how Rejoice has been a blessing to you. Rejoice TV messages are also available on iTunes when you search Rejoice TV. Encouraging Christians and reaching people for Jesus. This is Rejoice in the Lord.